we're back on the internet. Now, you may notice the wardrobe change from the week in review video, and that's because no, there wasn't. These are back to back. But we
Yeah.
are here for the Loster. Okay,
The
it's gonna be one of
lobster.
those.
The
The
lobster rock
lobster.
video.
The
Caleb,
lobster.
Caleb has done me in once again with his mispronunciating of things. He's losing his mind.
Pronunciate.
As
Pronunciate.
evidented there. You happy now?
Yeah,
Anyway,
we
we're here for
restarting.
the roster lock review. No, we're
Oh,
keeping that in.
we're just rolling
Yeah,
with it? Oh
yeah.
shit. Oh
Oh,
crap, I normally don't cuss on videos. Dadgummit.
I'm a big man. I can admit when I did something stupid like say lobster instead of roster. But roster lock
Uh,
review, where we're here to just cover all the free agency moves throughout the season and take a look at how the teams finished up. Not going to be a particularly long one. That was probably going to be most of it, was all that hilarity. But back again with Caleb the C Gull Gulley, the coach of the West Texas Wingles and the right-hand man in the league, and Ali Hipsterbrownkid Sheikh, the other hand man in the league, and the assistant to the commissioner. So, to start things off, we're just going to take a look at the trades as they happened in order for each team individually. And starting us off, we're going to go alphabetically with the Charlotte Charizards. Don't check that. Starting things off, they traded just after the draft the Dragapult to the Toronto Trick Roomers for the second and third available draft picks from Toronto in Season 8. And as part of that trade, they did not want the Pokemon offered from Toronto, so they instead picked up the Goodra. Then a week or so later, they decided this Morgrem would be better suited to the team as a Tentacruel, which has been a crucial part of their plans going forward. Eventually deciding that this Chargebug didn't really have a home on the team and deciding to replace it with that Rapidash that has seen great usage since. And then with their final two available roster moves, they decided to release the Pelipper for the Reuniclus to pick up a little more damage and give themselves another Trick Room option, and releasing the Throw to pick up the ever-so-speedy Chinchino out of Tier 4.
Yep. And then the next team on our list, the Chapo Haluches. As you can see, I can't pronounce teams very well, so they're giving me the short list. In the last week of the season, right before the deadline, the Chapo Haluches did make two moves. They dropped the Crocodile for the Arcanine, who has seen a lot of success in our draft league over the seasons. Matter of fact, has a few championships to its name. And then the Dragalge being dropped in favor of the newly acquired Nidoqueen, something that has not ever been played in the draft league. So that's going to be fun to watch. And Chapel Hill, very happy with how their draft went, just needing two moves, they think, to make the run into playoffs. We'll see how it shakes out.
Then moving on to Jersey City over here. Right in that first week, they dropped this Aselkor Palossand duo to pick up the Golurk and Riolu. Riolu was then later dropped to pick up that Malamar, and their legendary Latios was dropped to pick up that Cobalion, which they've seen a lot of success with.
Very, very true. And then taking a look at the, rising star roster, if you will, the Memphis Machamps, deciding after its first usage that Tyrant should be replaced with something a little more democratic, like the Flareon. That is Parker, the coach of the Memphis
Still can't
Machamps,
believe you made
joke.
that joke.
Yeah,
That was great.
that is not my joke. Credit where credit is due. And then deciding that this Drifblim would be better suited to the team if it were a Vanillux. I'm still mad at Caleb for that one. You can fight me. But then, one of the most crucial moves we've seen came in this last week when the Amistar, the young Cthulhu itself, was traded to become a Quagsire. Absolute menace. Love this move for the team. But that's all they made.
Yeah. Only 3, but that's 3 more than last season, so they figured out how free agency worked. As they said, a team that did know how free agency worked and did a lot of it was the Nashville Ninetales. As you can see, a lot of the top pieces of their draft moving out in favor of more comfortable pieces. The Colossal being dropped in favor of the G-Max Camparaja. Regigigas tried to get some steam early on in the season, unfortunately not able to, so that was replaced with Zapdos. The Tier 4 Glalie, which has always been a favorite for the Ninetales, picked up in favor of another favorite, the Charjabug. And then in a trade with the Zambian Zebtricas, the Galarian Weezing was dropped in favor of the Metagross, who was acquired for the third available pick for the Nashville Ninetales. And then Caparaja was dropped in favor of Gmax Grimmsnarl after that move was announced at the end of the free agency period.
Who'll be making some moves. But moving on to the Toronto Trick Rumors here. They sent their Charizard and their first available draft pick to the West Texas Wingulls to acquire that Venusaur. And then they dropped their Garchomp in to get the Dragapult traded over from the Charlotte Charizards, along with that second and third available draft pick. And then out of Tier 4, we see that Vulpix being dropped for the Hitmonchan. And then finally that Tangrowth being dropped for the Lycanroc.
Lycanroc Dusk baby. But as was just stated, right after the draft, we had our first move of the season, which was this Venusaur being traded from the West Texas Wingulls to the Toronto Trick Rumors for that first available draft pick. And then the West Texas Wingulls immediately decided, hey, we don't like the Charizard, actually. We want Snorlax to play the Toronto Trick Rumors with. That was met with a Vulpix that was entirely too strong, and they said, if Snorlax can be beat by simply a Tier 4 Vulpix, even though that is a very strong one, we'd actually rather have that Charizard back. So they went and got it, because fortunately for them, it was still there. But all jokes aside, a little bit later in the season, here much closer to the end, they decided, hey, the Kingdra feels good, but not quite what we need for the team. Let's go pick up that Garchomp that was released at the beginning of the season instead. And then settling on this Audino parting ways with the team and bringing in the sock from the Zambia Zebstricas for essentially free.
Yeah, it was free, actually. There was a very flippant relationship with that Charizard, but we have made amends, and it has been very happy on our team since. Zambian Zebstricas, though, a very good friend of mine, allowing me to take that sock in favor for coaching next time they play. That's what the sock was given up for. The Metagross was traded to the Nashville Ninetales for the Ninetales third available pick whenever the Zebstricas do come back in the league. So they weren't able to play, but they were able to keep their roster, was what ultimately was decided. And because of that, we're able to make a few moves to maybe help them out in a future season.
Very, very true. But now we've covered all of the free agency moves. Let's take a look at exactly how these teams settled out for the season. Starting with our Charlotte Charizards. As you can see over here on the left, the Pokemon that they released throughout the season were the Dragapult in the trade to Toronto, the Morgrem, the Charjabug that ended up on the Nashville Ninetales, and then finally this Pelipper and this Throw. Ending on the Charlotte Charizards roster, coming from the S tier is this Thundurus and Cinderace. From the tier 1s, it is Goodra and Amoonguss. Rounding out the tier 2s, we see the Hitmontop, the Klefki, and the Reuniclus. From tier 3, we see Luxray and Tentacruel alongside this Thwackey. And the tier 4, where we saw the most movement for this team, is the still present Lunatone, but alongside some new friends, the Galarian Rapidash and Cinccino.
Yep, and in contrast, we're going to look at this Chapel Hill Hawluchas, who's had a very good season so far. You see only the two roster moves we've already mentioned, dropping that Crocodile and Dragalge. So a lot of this roster stayed the same from draft day, being that legend Pokemon, the Reggie, Aleki, then the Gmax Urshifu from the Gmax tier, both those the S tier in our draft league. Tier 1s being the Togekiss and the Arcanine, both being very successful in our league historically. Tier 2, we got to see the Alakazam, the Magnezone, and the newly acquired Nidoqueen. Tier 3 was the Galarian Mr. Mime, the Shiinotic, and the Turtonator, who has always been a fan favorite in our league. And then Tier 4, the Dedenne, almost slipped up on that one, guys. Then the tier 4 Pokemon they've had a lot of success with, the Doublade and then the Pyukumuku from tier 4 stuck around, even though we were really debating would it actually, but it did make the final roster.
Made the final cut.
Oh. And so we take a look at Jersey City's roster here. They did release that Selgor, Palisand, Riolu, and Latios. And they are finishing up this season with their newly acquired Cobalion in the Legend tier and the Rillaboom coming from the G-Max tier, Vaporeon and Whimsicott in tier 1, Gigalith, Hawlucha, and Mienshao in tier 2, the newly acquired Golurk and Malamar in tier 3 alongside that Magmortar, and then tier 4 with the Grapploct, Ninjask, and Rhydon.
Right on, man. Right on. But now taking a look at the shiny man himself, the Memphis Machamps. Released throughout the season were the Tyrant, the Drifblim, and Amistar. And the final roster for this team includes the Legend tier Regidrago, the G-Max Machamp, the Gothitelle and Guzzlord as the tier 1s, the Aerodactyl, the Arctozolt, and the Vanillux are the tier 2s. Coming from tier 3, we see Blissey, the Gardevoir, and the Lucario. And tier 4, where things get spicy for this team, deciding they didn't like the rock types, they kept the Crustle but added the Flareon and our boy the Quagsire.
Gotta love the Quagsire. Happy to see it having success in the league, and it's just been fun to watch. But a team that was very, a team that's been very active in free agency was the Nashville Ninetales. You see those 5 released Pokemon: the Colossal, the Regigigas, the Rectangular Prism with the nose, the Caparajah, the G-Max Weezing, and then the Glalie. It was very moody, so it got dropped. We've never seen that, unfortunately. One day, Ali's going to do it. Yeah, G-Max Weezing, man. Galarian Weezing is actually what I meant to say. But hey, we can't have a perfect run. Who are we kidding? This team finishing out with that Cantonian Zapdos and then the Grimmsnarl, the G-Max edition. Then the franchise Pokemon Primarina did stick around, the only one from the top 4 of that draft that did. Then Megatoes or Metagross, whichever one you want to call it first. That was the newly acquired Pokemon from the Zambia Zebstricas. The tier 2s being the Haxorus, Umbreon, and Volcarona. Tier 3 is the Archeops, Cantonian Dugtrio, and Galvantula. Tier 4 is the favorite Charjabug, Cottony, and Quillfish.
Yeah, and taking a look at Toronto here, you see they released that Garchomp, Charizard, Tangrowth, and Vulpix, and will be finishing the season out with that legendary Moltres, Galarian Moltres, the G-Max Venusaur, those tier 1s, the Dragapult and the Comfey, the tier 2s, the Duskform Lycanroc, the Mandibuzz, and the Sableye, the tier 3s of Dugtrio, or Alolan Dugtrio, Manectric, and Salazzle. And in tier 4, we've got our Behemoth, Hitmonchan, and the Wailord.
What the people came to see.
Still waiting for Wailord, Guzzlord Max. I hope that happens next series.
Well, you heard it here first, Parker. We got to make it happen. So, Wailord versus Guzzlord, the showdown. But
please.
The final team we're going to be taking a look at here today is this West Texas Wingles, tied for most moves in the league. Unless you don't count them swapping out the same Pokemon several times.
Could make up a mind.
Do we like Charizard? Do we not? But anyways, they released that Venusaur over to the Toronto Trick Rumors in exchange for this Charizard that they then released to pick up the Snorlax that they then released for the Charizard. And then let go of the Kingdra and the Audino late in the season, settling on the final roster of Tapu Fini and G-Max Charizard as their S tiers, and having the Garchomp and Incineroar as the tier 1s. In tier 2, the Escavalier, the Liepard, and the Serena. And then Heliolisk Tier 3 Edition, Sigalith Tier 3 Edition, and Toxicroak Tier 3 Edition. I just liked when Caleb said edition, so I stole it. And then rounding it out in Tier 4, this newly acquired Sock, alongside the only Pokemon to get more than one ability when it's on Toronto Trick Rumors. It's the Seeking, and Togetic,
how that works.
which is not Togekiss, as I keep calling it. It is Togetic. That is a different Pokemon.
Glad to know I'm not the only one who messes these things up.
Well, we proved that several times this video, that we all suck at talking in the English language. So,
Yep.
and I'm not going to switch to Korean. I thought about it, but we're not doing that today. So,
Oh, please don't. That would just confuse the heck out of me. I already got squiggly lines to Kingdra. That was confusing enough, that one series.
you're welcome for that. But
Yeah, thank you.
with that, ladies and gentlemen, people at home, thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this look at how everything's shaped up for these coaches throughout the season. Be a good friend and wish them all luck in the comments down below. And gentlemen, if you don't have anything else to add,
Don't. Not this time.
then we'll catch you on the next one. Have a good night, everybody.